Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name is Claire McCall. I am based in New Zealand, but I was born in South Africa. I don't consider myself much of a tough gal because I only started hiking in my 40s. And since then, I've done lots of New Zealand hikes, but also climbed Kilimanjaro. I usually am a journalist. I write about mainly architecture and design for a lot of the New Zealand magazines and some of the Australian ones. So I'm a self-employed creative, not always a good combination. We live in Auckland, the biggest city, and in 2022 went on my very first long-distance hike with my partner, James. The Hexa Trail is 3,034 kilometres. It's a walk in France. We didn't want to do the entire thing. It's 138,000 meters of elevation and goes through 14 national parks and links together 47 GR trails. And it started in 2022. A couple of guys got together and decided they wanted to create their own similar thing to the Pacific Crest Trail or New Zealand's Tierra Trail.
How was your childhood growing up? Were you outdoorsy? Were you sporty?
When I look back, I just think, how did I miss the idea of sport? I think my parents were definitely not sporty. They didn't play anything. Hence, I didn't play anything. I had a few girlfriends who played tennis, but that was about it. And I gave netball a go, but we didn't do any walking or hiking or camping. We just weren't one of those families where actually my parents are both from the north of England, and I don't think that was in their in their DNA. Very kind of city, urban childhood, pretty much never seen a mountain before.
So what changed in your 40s? Was there a moment that you can pinpoint of why you sort of wanted to start doing something new and different?
It actually was a girlfriend of mine. She started doing some hikes and she said, why don't you come? So I was like, all right, I'll try it. And I can remember the very first hike that she took me on was called the Pinnacles. And it's just a hike that goes, as you can imagine by the name, I should have been warned by the name, up, 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 up. And then again, down, 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 which I've always found hardest. And the next day, I just could not walk. It was a up and back, walk in a day. And the next day, I had to sort of walk downstairs sideways. It was hilarious. I couldn't believe people actually went out there and did that sort of thing for fun.
But you must have enjoyed something about it.
I enjoyed the challenge of it. I think for me, that in the beginning, that was why I did it. I mean, we did the Tongariro circuit after that, and that was about 4 days walking. And I can remember thinking to myself after about, 5 hours one day walking, 6 hours walking, do people really walk this long? I'd never been on more than a half hour, 1 hour walk. So it was quite a revelation, but I loved the challenge of it and the feeling of kind of exhaustion after it. It was great.
So how did Kili come about then? Was that like sort of wanting to climb that for a special reason?
Well, yes. Another thing is my son, who was 14 at the time, he wanted to do a challenge. He read, I think he read the John Krakauer book, Into Thin Air, and for some reason it didn't put him off mountain climbing. And so he said, I want to climb all the 7 peaks. And I said, oh, well, okay, I'll set you up on this path. And so me and my partner, James, and Frem and my son, we went off to Kilimanjaro. Chose that one because it seemed, accessible, and also go back to Africa. I couldn't wait to get back to Africa. And at 14, he was the youngest Kiwi to climb it. And I did quite well. I did really well. I didn't get, any sort of altitude sickness, whereas the others had headaches and all sorts of things. So I was thinking, oh, I'm not bad at this.
So was there a pause after Kili or after completing Kili? Did you continue sort of doing these smaller adventures and challenges, these sort of day hikes or sort of mini multi-day hikes? Did you continue to be active and spend time outdoors? And was this something new for your partner as well? Or was he sort of outdoorsy?
Oh, he's far more outdoorsy than me. He's actually a climber. And used to live near the Lake District and was always doing hikes across the fells and up the mountains and things like that. But for me, it was, I think, hitting my 50s. It's quite a turning point when you hit your 50s, I believe. You start to think about your life. It really does. You suddenly realize you've probably lived more of your life than you're going to get left. And I think by that stage also you're kind of into your career. You've almost done what you really want to do. So I was looking for something new. I wanted to do something really different. I kept quite fit. I wouldn't say I was super fit. And I thought, at first I thought the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail, but the more I read about it and all the wildfires and all the bears that you could meet, it kind of put me off. And then at the same time I was studying French with the Alliance Française, and I thought, oh, this walk just popped into my social media feeds. But it was the perfect combination of being able to go and challenge myself to do something, like my first long distance walk, and speak French along the way and good cheese. So we started to plan.
Were you always thinking, I want to do this solo, and then your sort of partner sort of invited themselves along? Or was this something that you discussed and you realized that actually you wanted to do it together?
Oh, we definitely wanted to do it together. I mean, we'd always talked about the Pacific Crest Trail. Well, I introduced the idea and he's very amenable, which is great. And he said, yeah, that would be fantastic. So, and then when I came up with the Hexa Trek, it was actually James who said to me, you do know it's a mountain walk. I think I just glossed over that statement. I was like, oh, yeah, no, it'll be fine. Like I say in the book, I'm not a numbers person. People can spew out numbers and heights of mountains and distances, and it just goes in one ear and out the other because I have no concept, or let me say, I had no concept of, what those feet and meters actually mean on the ground.
So you're having this conversation with your partner. You've made the decision that the Hexa is the trail that you're going to take on. In terms of the planning and preparation, how easy was it for the two of you to get time off work, to figure out, did you already have the savings ready to self-fund it? It's the logistics of actually, okay, because I think this is quite an important bit, because so many people have the dream, they have the idea, let's go off and do the PCT. And then it's like, well, there's wildfires and there's bears. Okay, let's not do that. And then it's like, oh, the Hexa Trail. But then you made it happen. So talk me through that, the planning, the preparation, the logistics. What did that look like for you? So you mentioned you're not a numbers person, so I imagine there's not spreadsheets unless that's your partner's thing. But sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking.
No spreadsheets, yeah. Absolutely not. I run a mile from a spreadsheet. Yeah, I think that part of it being a sort of a creative, we're both creatives. He's an artist and I'm a writer. So we love the dream. And so once you're captured by a dream, I think you will do anything to make it happen. And I'm in a quite privileged position, I understand, because I work for myself and we both work for ourselves. So we could, work like crazy trying to save. So we saved for about a year, but also what we did was we rented our house out. So that is a privileged position. I'm quite, aware of that. But that gave us the funds to keep going on the Hexa Trek. As far as planning it went, I mean, we made some rookie errors. I had to get back to work in the September, and so we wanted to take 4 months. We never expected to do the whole thing. We thought we'll do 4 stages of it, and wanted to take 4 months. And we thought we would start in May, and so we thought, well, the southern part of it must be warmer than the northern part of it, so we'll start in the Pyrenees. And it wasn't long before we found out from a Discord group that the Hexa Trek people had set up that the Pyrenees sort of go very high very quickly, and in May they would still have lots of snow on them. So we changed and we started in the Vosges up in the north, and so we were walking Sobo. We did have a lot of the equipment, obviously, because we're hikers. We did need to buy a tent, so James did a lot of research on that and bought a tent that weighed 1.5 kilos. I don't know what else we did to plan. It was after COVID or during COVID, so there was not much else to do because we were all stuck at home and the magazine's just about closed. I write for just about closed down. One of the things I would say is that overthinking it can be paralysis to a dream. I think, yes, certainly don't go in completely naive and not have the right stuff. You are all going out into the wilderness. But if you want every day to be planned out, every kilometre to be known, you're just going to be stuck. And it's better to go than be stuck.
Did you have any concerns before you headed out there?
The only concerns I had was that I would fail in my mind. There was nothing in my mind that I was frightened of. I was frightened of the snow. I was frightened of the snow. Being born in South Africa, I hate the cold. I'm the only person I've ever known to pull out an emergency blanket in a Department of Conservation hut here. And my friends will never let me forget it. But when I first started hiking, I had a pathetic sleeping bag because I didn't do my research, and it was so cold even in the hut for me, and I do feel the cold. I was trying to put my emergency blanket over me in the middle of the shed hut, and my friends were in hysterics.
Yeah. I don't think that's funny at all because I also experienced the cold, and I think your friends, that's not nice for them to laugh at you when they know that you're cold and probably shivering. Yeah, that's a sensible maneuver because if you're cold, you're not going to get to sleep. So all hail the fact that you had one of those silver blanket things with you. Sorry, that gets my goat up.
I was rustling around with it, waking everybody up. But one of my friends did say, look, I don't feel the cold, use my sleeping bag. So to her credit, she gave it to me.
Now we're talking about a proper friend. That's what you want. Yeah, I like that.
That's what I tell them. Selena, she gave me her sleeping bag. What did you do?
Yeah, exactly. You complained about the rustling because I was thought I was going to die in the hut.
So I was afraid of the cold, and I'm not. I said to James, you might be a bit of a mountain climber, but I'm not. So if there are any bits where crampons are required, we're going around them. I'm not doing that. That's what I was afraid of. But the main thing is the fear of failure, and I think that's a lot of women actually. We're very hard on ourselves, and I didn't want to come back with my tail between my legs saying, "Oh, I couldn't manage it."
What would failure be though? Did you give yourself specific rules that you were trying to follow? Is it just we're going to walk 4 stages, we're going to walk every single bit of those 4 stages. If we don't do those 4 stages, then it's a failure. Was that how rigid you were?
Well, yes and no. No, because before we left, we both of us said to each other, if there's bits that we really don't like or they're just boring, we're supposed to be having fun. So we'll just catch a public, which you can do in France because everything. What I liked about the route was there were escape routes everywhere. That's what happens in Europe, unlike the PCT where you probably couldn't escape for 3 or 4 days if you wanted to. So we said that we would catch public transport if we really hated a section and skip those. But then the instant I set foot on the trail and started walking, I realized that that was just not an option. It suddenly felt to me like cheating. And so our thing was we could leave the trail, but we had to still walk. If there was a really high spot ahead of us and we heard that people were struggling with the snow levels, we would walk around it. And it might mean an extra 50 Ks or so, but we would find a way to walk around it. And we had to walk every single step of the way. That's the thing that became very important to us. Not changing the route. We didn't mind if we changed the route, but we wanted to walk every step of the way. But this sense of guilt was there, and it's still there. If you take out a bit of a route and change it, and then you meet up with other people who are doing it and they're talking about it, you feel a bit of a failure. But yeah, there's that little niggle that goes on inside you going, oh, bet you we could have done it if we'd really pushed ourselves, kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's something that I never expected to have to tussle with along what's supposed to be a fun adventure.
But what were the other fears that you sort of unlocked on the trail?
Cows. I never thought I'd be frightened of cows. I mean, the first time I came across the cows, I took beautiful photos of these gorgeous cows with big doughy eyes. But then there came a point where we had to go through a farm gate and there was a whole herd of them blocking the route. And when you're standing next to them, they're actually quite big and tall. And I suddenly went, oh my goodness, I can't go through those cows. And James had to say to me, now, come on, what are you going to do? We can't stop here. You're not going to let a herd of cows stop you on this adventure. But I just had to push through them, put my sticks in front of me and push through them. And I just developed quite a fear of cows. And after that, I read that lots of people are actually killed by cows. So perhaps it was slightly justified.
100% justified. So it's not like everyone listening is going, oh my God, Sarah's going to go on a rant about cows. I won't rant for too long. I used to think the same as you. I like cows, they're beautiful animals. I love them behind a fence. They're just curious. But the fact is, they are 2-ton animals. They get scared or frightened, or they come charging at you. It is one of the most scary things ever. And I was on the Wales Coast Path and I've had cows running towards me. And it's just, it has installed a fear. Not, by the way, having a fear of cows, it is not irrational. It's a very rational, logical thing. And it's just, I actually think it's quite normal. And I actually remember speaking to, there's a girl called Elise Downing, who's been on the podcast. She was the youngest woman to run around the coast of Great Britain. She wrote a great book called Coasting. And during that book, she talked about cows and her fear of them. And when I first spoke with Elise, I just didn't get it, because in my head I was thinking, why would you go on a massive detour around a field? Why would you add extra miles to your journey to escape cows? And then it happens. And then you're like, oh no, yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Oh, it does. Yeah. And the cows in Switzerland, because the Hexa Trek at one stage, it goes on the border of France and Switzerland. You go slightly into Switzerland because the wolf has actually naturally reintroduced itself to some of the parts of Switzerland. The cows are really spooked and hence very anxious. And an anxious cow, I do not want to meet face to face.
What did you find that worked for you when you got in these situations where you did feel fearful?
I just basically had to go a lot slower. I think if you're scared of a path for any reason and it just looks a bit ropey to you, fear is real. When you feel it, you feel it. So you have to just acknowledge it and go, okay, I'm scared. And I think just pause and try and keep calm and ask for the help you need. If you're lucky enough to have someone with you, say, can you take my hand and lead me along here? Or just ask for the help you need and take the time you need. And when you've done it once or twice, it does lessen a bit. And I think that's part of doing these things. If you were breezing through everything with no challenges to face, okay, it might be a hell of a lot more fun a lot more of the time, but you wouldn't have this very same sense of satisfaction that you did when you got to the end. And I think James pointed that out to me because he said, say that you feel guilty because you didn't do the whole thing, or you feel bad because you're so afraid of everything. But actually, you should feel prouder than most, because if you're not afraid of the things, what is it that you've overcome? What is it, that you've achieved? So I think that's a fair point.
Was the reality of the hike what you expected?
No, of course not. Not at all. I honestly thought it's going to be, because I've done several multi-day walks, 3 or 4 day walks in New Zealand. And I've loved those. I mean, those, just every minute I've loved, apart from being cold one time. But I just thought, what could be the difference? Nothing. This is how I thought of it. It's just stringing a few 3 or 4 day walks together. I mean, we ended up walking 64 days. So it, to me, it was that's how it was going to be. But it was so, so different. First of all, we were tenting, whereas usually we're staying in huts and things like that. And secondly, it's the length of it is just very long. I mean, it's so silly to think that a long distance walk, I didn't think about the length. But after day and day, I think 2 weeks in, I kind of hit a wall, and I was thinking, God, what have I done? I don't know if I'm going to do this. What have I done? What have I done? But, about 4 weeks in, it got better. Yeah, that was sort of a total surprise to me. I never thought I'd be like that. I thought I'd be loving every minute. I thought, and there was actually a day when you're walking, not particularly in these beautiful mountains, you're just making passage, really. And I was quite bored. I was thinking to myself, I must be a boring person because I can't entertain myself in my own mind anymore. So, yeah, there were a lot of things that taught me. But, the friendships I made on that walk and the quick chats in French with people who we passed, those things just made up for, the moments when I was thinking, what have I done? What have I done? Tenfold.
I think it's really easy, especially in this day of age of social media, for people to romanticize going on like a long distance walk. And I suppose in a way it is, because you can escape from your everyday life. And especially if you're not currently enjoying your job, you're struggling in your relationship, or things aren't going to plan, then it must be wonderful to think of going to a far-flung country on the other side of the world, and to hike every day, to have a simple way of living. And I think sometimes people almost forget about, I mean, it is a simple way of existing and living, but it's also the practicalities of, you're out there for 64 days, day after day. It's a physical challenge, but then when your body starts, yes, your body will adapt and you'll get used to doing the miles, which is absolutely fine, but it's still the physicality of it. And then that can start affecting you like mentally, and then also like emotionally as well. And it can be a lot to sort of absorb. And then also it can be that internal argument with yourself, especially as you're walking along thinking, oh, well, I'm a couple of weeks in, I'm not really enjoying this. This is meant to be, a holiday and a hike of a lifetime. We've taken 4 months off to do this. Like, sorry, I'd definitely question myself, like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not enjoying
That's exactly
this?
what I was saying.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? Why am I not enjoying this every, minute, expecting to enjoy it every minute? Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I think, like you say, physically it's tough. And I certainly got a lot fitter, which is amazing, when you get about a month into that thing, especially when you're walking, up 1,200, down 900 every day, just about. When I first started, I could barely put my backpack on. I'd always ask James, oh, can you help me? I mean, I'm such a whim. And then I couldn't, if I dropped one of my walking poles, I'd be like, trying to get it back up again. And I noticed probably about 2 weeks in that I was just like flinging my backpack on. If I dropped something, I'd just bend up, that would be no problem, and just grab it up. And so it was incredible. And then my shorts started to kind of fall down. I had to fashion a belt for my shorts, and that was incredible. And I was definitely getting fitter. though I never felt fit enough. But the mental and emotional stuff, yeah, that was just way harder than the physical, and that was a real surprise.
And how was it doing it with your partner? Because so I don't have a partner, never been hiking with a partner. I've hiked with, friends, and that can definitely have its challenges. But being 24 hours a day with somebody and sometimes navigating your own mind and what's going on and trying to be full of grit and resilience and, to do what needs to be done. Sometimes there may not necessarily be capacity to be caring and loving for somebody else. It might just be like, oh God, like how they're chewing their food is annoying me. How they are breathing is annoying me. But how did you handle that from like a relationship perspective? What things worked well? What did you sort of learn about each other? How did it impact your relationship?
Well, it's funny. So many people asked me that before I went and after we got back. And I was totally 100% comfortable with that. But I did discover that James is a saint, an absolute saint. I mean, I was the difficult one. I fully acknowledge that. I was always the one going, oh, how far have we got to go now? And he's just super patient. He's an artist who does graphite art, and it takes hours. He does these incredibly lifelike, intricate drawings. And I think he's just patience itself. So, I had no worries that anything terrible would happen to our relationship. We're not perfect, and we definitely did have one blow up, which I can remember. It was when we were trying to, another long day, and I was going, where is the lake? Because I knew we were going to stop at the lake for lunch. And he said, oh, it's just around this corner, as in some corner of a mountain. And he was actually talking about the entire mountain, and I was thinking about the very next corner. And we got round the corner, and to my disappointment, no lake. And I was like, which corner? and
Where's the lake, James?
Yeah, where's the
lake, James?
And there was a bit of a strop both of us then, and not from him as well. And he just took off, and I was like, right, I'll just do this on my own. Anyway, of course, about 15 minutes later, I come up, he stopped. He's waiting for me on a rock, and it was all fine. I mean, it definitely strengthened our relationship. We have a strong relationship anyway, but to do something like this together and go through all of it and come out the other end and have something to talk about, for the rest of our lives, I highly recommend it.
We've obviously talked about some of the challenges of the trail, but also I know that there will be highlights and magical memories and the rose tinted glasses when you look back on the trail. But I'd love you to share like some of those moments, maybe some of the people that you met. What are some of those highlights?
The highlights for me was being in France. I love French, and to speak it and have people along the route speaking it to me. They were like little gifts, these tiny conversations with people, an old man walking his dog who told us a little shortcut on one path, a guy along the route who was fishing in the Jura, and I had a short conversation with him about what he'd been doing that day. A man who was cooking on a strange kind of barbecue levery thing that he put over an open fire, who I was asking about, and then he invited us to have lunch with them. A guy who ran a fruit and vegetable stall, who, when we just couldn't find anywhere to put our tent, it was such a wooded area, there was nowhere, said, you look exhausted, here's a beer, please feel free to pitch your tent in my back. He had a trout farm as well next to the trout farm. Just these incredible people who will never know how much that meant to us. Just acts of kindness. They don't have trail angels, unlike on the PCT, and I think there's a few on the Tiara Trail. It's such a new route that they didn't have trail angels. We were doing it in the pioneer year in 2022. But there was one woman who had set up like coffee outside her country house on the top of a mountain in the Vosges. And she was great. And she came out and sat and chatted with us. Then there were two people we met in the Vanoise National Park, and the Vanoise was spectacular. That was what I expected to be walking through most of the time. These incredible valleys with wildflowers going on everywhere and these mountains up the side, just so picturesque, and little marmots hopping around. I mean, it's like something from a fairy tale, honestly. But in the Vanoise, I met two Swiss ladies, and they were of my age. Because most of the people we met were a lot younger than us, I have to say. We were in our mid-50s, but we met these two women, and we just clicked with them. And my favorite part is that we ended up in the refuge together, playing Scrabble in French. I mean, those little things are just, pure joy. So lots of great stuff.
Obviously it was this sort of its pioneering year, sort of the first year it's sort of really come out. A, were there many other hikers doing it? And B, like, how was it? Was it signposted well? Was it easy to navigate? Or what was that situation like?
So it's very well set up because it is literally just a join up of GR trails. And we started pretty early in the season. We started on the 7th of May. So there weren't that many other people walking it as the Hexa Trek. Some people were walking the GR5, which we did most of our walking on. But what was really useful is that the Hexa Trek had an app, a dedicated app, and we found that absolutely fantastic. I mean, it just had incredible information on it. It was always pretty accurate. I mean, for a first year, you could get where the water points, some of the water points, yes, there was no water there, but it wasn't like, you were crossing a desert. You were going very close to villages most of the time. So we didn't really feel afraid that we'd run out of water.
Just a quick clarification. So what's the difference between the GR5 and the Hexa Trek? Or are they on a very similar route? So for example, like it would be like the England Coast Trail going around like Cornwall, and then you're on like the Southwest Coast Path. So that's like part of the trail, if that makes sense.
Yes. So they're existing routes. So the GR5, the Hexa Trek follows the GR5 for a long time, and then it might turn off onto the GR55. Oftentimes it goes a little bit higher than the GR routes, just a tiny bit, because they like mountains, these guys. There is no difference between the route for a lot of the way, but it's just the way they've joined them up, really. So they wanted to create a through hike like America had, and could see that they could do it easily because there was such existing routes. There's a few bits of road walking which they've had to use to join these trails up, but it's not a lot. It's not like the Tierra Trail.
On the road sections, are they like main roads, or are they more like little country back roads?
Well, country back streets. Yeah. I mean, we didn't walk the entire thing, so I can't speak for it all, but it's my understanding because, I've read a lot of other people's reviews of the Hexa Trek, is that the road walking isn't a lot. Definitely not. And if it is, we did it one section, and I think it was through Switzerland a little bit, and it was a bit of country road walking, but it was only a day and a half. So, easy to put up with.
What were you doing for accommodation?
I mean, that was another great thing about the walk. It was so flexible. So if you wanted to, you could wild camp the entire thing. And also on the app, you follow the line, and when it turns red, you're not allowed to wild camp, but when it's green, you can wild camp according to the French rules of bivouac, which is pretty much, I think, the same as wild camping everywhere. You've got to arrive off about 5 or 6 at night, set up for one night, and then leave, 7, 8, 9 in the morning. Nobody's coming around checking it. So, but I mean, they don't expect you to be there more than one night. We did that. There was one night we wild camped on the border. One part of our tent was in Switzerland and the other was in France. It was fantastic fun. And then there were lots of campgrounds, really amazing campgrounds with restaurants and things like that, which to us coming from New Zealand was a revelation. There were, in the Vosges particularly, there were refuges, but they were unguarded refuges, which means that they weren't manned by anybody. They didn't serve dinner. And they ranged from something that looked like a garden hut. In fact, probably was a converted shed in the garden, not a garden, but in the mountains, to incredible structures with, own beautiful slate roofs, and they all had a fireplace, a stove in them, so you could cook on top of the stove. And they're all, in the Vosges in particular, they were stocked with wood. These volunteers who do an incredible job, and it's free. It's an incredible system. You just arrive, and there's wood on hand. And I think apart from one place in the Jura, we were early in the season, we were the only ones there. So those were the non-guarded refuges. As we got into the Alps, there were guarded refuges, which are obviously serviced and obviously cost money. I think they were about €40 per person per night, dinner and a bed and breakfast. But you could actually camp in front of the refuges. That was a really good option. I believe it was €5 to €10 a night for that, but you could go inside, make your dinner in the kitchen, sit and chat to everybody inside, use their facilities, even use their showers. An amazing option. And then, occasionally we'd stay in hotels in villages and Airbnbs when we were closer to the bigger towns. So a total mix, and you could definitely do it just all wild camping if you're really on a budget and really want to.
Would you do another long distance hike?
I think it's a bit like childbirth. It's like, we ended up doing, we did 1,350 kilometers, and I would do it again now. It's been 2 years, and I'm really tempted to go back and finish the Pyrenees section of the Hexa Trek. I think I'd be better prepared mentally, and I know what to expect. I mean, I'm totally, my eyes are opened. So, and I still want to do it. So yeah, I would definitely go back and do another 60-day stretch.
How was writing the book, like taking the time out to reflect on the journey, did it change your perspective at all on feeling a little bit like a failure?
So I was blogging all the way along. I got this amazing little keyboard, which was a Bluetooth keyboard, which could turn my phone screen into a typewriter, into like a laptop, a little mini laptop. And because I'm a touch typist, I could never log just, using my phone. So that was one of my favorite finds of the trip, actually. It was super light, tiny, and just, it's a little keyboard. And I was blogging. And then when I got back, I thought, this is the framework of a book, actually. And being a journalist, I thought, I can do this. And it's such an incredible experience, and nobody had ever written about the Hexa Trek before. So, I wrote the book. It did make me reflect a bit more on feeling guilty. It kind of made me feel worse in a way, because I was thinking, oh, no, if I'd have only done, those extra stages, I could write about that. And then this would really be about the Hexa Trek. And I did, even though in all the preamble I said it's a memoir of my journey on the Hexa Trek, and we're only ever going to tackle 3 stages, people were reading it as a guidebook to the Hexa Trek, and it's not. It's definitely not your expected. I think it's quite funny in places, very honest, brutally honest. It does give you good information about joining up with the Hexa Trek app, joining up with the Discord group, what we packed. So it's got a bit of that in it, but it's definitely not a guidebook because it's a memoir. And I'm glad I wrote it. I mean, it did change our lives because we loved France so much that the next year, after our Hexa Trek experience, we went on a little road trip around the south of France, and we found this village that I absolutely loved. And so I put a notice on a Facebook community site saying, we're New Zealanders, we love France, we'd love to come back and do a long-term house swap. And we got a lady doing a house swap for 3 months, came to our house in New Zealand, and we went there, and we ended up meeting a whole group of fantastic creative people. So now we have friends, and the Swiss ladies who we met on the trek, we visited them as well. And so I think what it's done is it's given me a whole new life in the Northern Hemisphere, and my ideal would be to go every 6 months.
Yeah.
In the summer, Northern Hemisphere summer, and Southern Hemisphere summer here. That would be my dream. So yeah, writing the book has enforced that.
I am with you. I honestly, my dream would be to avoid winter. But I do like Christmas in a cold country. I find Christmas in a hot country very, very strange.
Very strange.
And it's just not Christmassy. But I do enjoy Christmas with the family in the UK. But then, to be honest, after Boxing Day, like I'm good to go. Like, yeah, I've hit my limit of how much cold I can hack it to Christmas, because I think you're looking forward to Christmas. But also, like, why not make that a reality? The fact is, if you can work from anywhere in the world and you're both creatives, and, if you're in the same place for too long, then maybe your creative juices get a bit stale. But then heading over to France for a couple of months, like, I don't know, dream big. Why not? Like, absolutely.
Digital nomads are a thing.
Absolutely. Claire, how can people connect with you? How can they find out more about your adventure, your challenge? Where are you most active on social media?
There's a Hiking the Hexa Instagram page, which they can look at. They can contact me through my website, which is clairemccall.net. Or if you want to buy the book, it's available on Amazon UK. It's called Hiking the Hexa, Amazon US, everywhere. So, yeah.
Awesome. Claire, I'd love for you to have final words of advice and wisdom for other women out there who, want to take on a new challenge. And, they might be of a similar age. They might not have grown up with a background of sports and being active, might have come into it sort of later on in life. What advice would you like to share? But please don't say, just do it.
I think my biggest thing is just throw yourself into it. Don't overthink it. Do a bit of good planning. But, if you really want to do it, throw yourself into it. Don't get sidetracked. Try and work out how you're going to fund it. And, when you get to my age, if not now, then when? I mean, I'm very aware of that. I'm very aware that there will be, in a decade or so, I won't be able to do it. So don't regret not doing it, is what I'd say. Yeah, that's all. Keep yourself keep yourself fit, but you don't have to be a marathon runner. You will get fit on the trail. The trail will provide your fitness. It'll be hard, and don't expect it to be easy. Expect days where you're loving it, days where you're hating it. Just be realistic, but definitely do it, because it's so satisfying at the end, and you have something to share with everybody you know.
Definitely do it, and if not now, then when? Absolutely. Take the plunge, get out there, get hiking, follow your passions, do something which excites you, and just go on an adventure of a lifetime. Claire, thank you so much for going on your adventure of a lifetime. And I can't wait to follow along with your next thru hike.
Thank you. It's been great to speak to you.
Hey, tribe. How are you all doing? I hope you're all keeping super well. How is it the end of January? Honestly, I felt like I blinked and then Christmas was over, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day was over. Then it took a couple of days to get back into the rhythm, of which when Sunday felt like a Monday and then Monday felt like a Wednesday. Finally got back into my routine. And then it's like the end of January. Time is just flying by in 2025. But I hope you've got some plans in place. You've got some goals that you're working towards. I hope you've written down those goals on a piece of paper. That's very, very important. And I'd love it if you've even created like a vision board, some visual representation of what you want to achieve. And you've put it somewhere that you can see every single day. Really hope you enjoyed that episode with Claire, and it's inspired you to think about your next big hike. There is a connection to New Zealand. So there's a couple of connections which I'm going to weave in. So Claire is obviously from New Zealand, and as you'll probably know, as last year I was actually out in New Zealand, currently walking the South Island, and the vlogs from the New Zealand South Island hikes are now live. They're going live on YouTube every Wednesday, Friday and Sunday at 7 a.m. UK time. I've just passed through the Richmond Ranges and done the Waiu Pass. The scenery is absolutely stunning. It is a very, very, very different walking experience to what the North Island was. So if you started with the North Island vlogs and were like, oh, I can't bear watching any more road walking or going through any muddy forest, then please do pick up and watch the South Island vlogs. It's a very different experience. Like, the views are just honestly awe-inspiring. The third New Zealand connection is, some of you may remember, and this is going back a few years ago, back in 2020, April 14th, 2020, we spoke with Miriam Lancewood, Woman in the Wilderness, a story of survival, love and self-discovery in New Zealand. So Miriam was born in a loving home in a small village in the Netherlands in 1983. After completing her university degree, she worked for a year in Zimbabwe and then travelled to India. And in India, she met her now husband, Peter. Peter had resigned from his job as a university lecturer in New Zealand and had moved to India to live like a modern nomad. He had lived 5 years in India when they met. Together, they hiked over 8 mountain ranges in the Himalayas, journeyed for years through Southeast Asia, including Papua New Guinea, and eventually they ended up in Peter's home country, New Zealand. Miriam worked for a while as a teacher, then they decided to give up all their worldly belongings and move into the mountains with a tent and a bow and arrow. They wanted to learn how to hunt and survive in the wilderness, and they wanted to find out what happened to the mind and body when living in the beauty of the wildest nature on earth. So we spoke with Miriam back in 2020, April 14th. It was recorded a little bit earlier, but we are catching up with Miriam. That is going to be our next episode, catching up with Miriam Lancewood, and that episode is going to be coming out next Tuesday. So if you haven't done so already, but I know you have, please do hit that subscribe button. And I'd recommend, if you haven't done so already, go back and listen to that episode just to learn more about this incredible woman and the amazing life that she has been living. And we're going to be doing a follow-up again, equally as inspiring. Just phenomenal stories, a phenomenal life. Really, really interesting. But we do have new episodes going live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. Couple of, well, I say this all the time, couple of requests. I'd love for you to tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast, because that is how we get more women inspired to follow their dreams and passions. I'd love for you to leave a review on I was going to say social media, but on whichever listening platform that you are listening on. It really does make a difference, especially when women are coming along. Should I listen to the Tough Girl podcast? Should I not? If you could leave a 5-star review, a little bit of a few of the reasons why you enjoy it, if it's inspired you to take on new adventures and challenges, that would be great. I know times are really tough at the moment, but if you are in a financially strong and stable situation and you do have some extra cash lying around, I'd love for you to sign up as a patron. If you visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, you can sign up as a monthly patron or an annual patron, or you can just make a donation via PayPal. It is all really, really appreciated. What that means is that it gives me like a monthly sort of income that then allows me to fund the running costs of the podcast, of the website, all of those things that go into running an online business. Life here is good with me. What am I doing? I'm doing lots of strength training at the moment. So I'm working hard on my ankle strength, my ankle mobility, my hip mobility. I'm trying to improve my deadlift, my bench press. To be honest, I'm almost like working on everything. The other day I was actually doing like grip strength exercises, because grip strength is actually a sign of longevity, which I found fascinating. So I was doing like 45 seconds dead hang, then waiting 15 seconds, doing another 45 second, and oh my goodness, my forearms were absolutely burning. But I hope your training is going well. And I love the fact that some of you could be sat on like the tube now in the underground, or you could be out in nature walking, taking on your own challenge, or you could be lying in a tent somewhere remote in the world, or you could be pottering around in the kitchen or in the garden, or you're out on the coast just listening to my voice, whether that is in January 2025 or many years later in 2030. You've discovered the Tough Girl podcast, and there's now over 1,000 episodes for you to listen to and to be inspired by. I just love the legacy that we are building here together. You know, there are over 750 episodes in the back catalogue, which is just incredible to think that there's so many women's stories, women's voices being heard. I also know that it's not enough. We need more women's voices, more women's stories out there. So I'm doing my best to just keep on producing this content, and just thank you so much for supporting the work that I do. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.